That last slide we just talked about, that immense cross-sectional area we have with the capillaries. Now let's look specifically at how we're going to actually be exchanging things from the blood to the tissue and cells that are going to be surrounding it. We have here an arteriole, and you can see that arteriole is going to be oxygenated, nutrient-rich blood into our capillary, and then we're going to have that capillary changing color here, kind of showing that purple until it turns blue, where we have dropped off of our oxygen and nutrients, and then we have the blood coming back through the venule. What we're looking at in capillary exchange is we're having both chemicals and gaseous exchange between the blood in the capillaries to the cells that are going to be surrounding it, as well as the interstitial fluid that's going to be bathing it. And it's not just a one-way direction. Things are going to come from the blood to the cells and tissue, but also from the cells and tissue and going back into the blood. A lot of this is going to happen directly through diffusion, and you're going to have the movement going with its concentration gradients from a high concentration to a lower concentration gradient. What we're going to see is that we're going to have diffusion until at some point that gradient is eliminated, and then we're going to have to look at how the blood flow is going to occur. For that diffusion, if we look really close up, we can see here are our endothelial cells, or simple squamous cells, and then we have pores or openings that are going to be between each of those areas between the cells. Now, when we look really close at it, what we can see is that you have small solutes that are going to be dissolved within the water. The water is going to be carrying all these small solutes, and with diffusion, we're going to have that flowing out through the pore, and then it's going to go to the tissue that's going to be surrounding it. So anything dissolved within the water itself is able to flow very easily through it. That can be things like ions, small organic molecules, glucose, amino acids. Those are easily going through even the continuous capillaries or through the pores of the fenestration. When you're talking about things that are ions like sodium, potassium, calcium, and chloride, they're going to pass through specifically membrane channels within the cells that will allow us to move things in and out. Large water-soluble compounds, though, only diffuse if you have a fenestrated capillary. So you need a fenestrated capillary to have those coming out through diffusion. But lipids, steroids, fatty acids, oxygen and carbon dioxide fall into that category too. They're going to be able to diffuse across the actual membrane itself to go in and out. Plasma proteins, the only way that they're going in and out, though, is if you're going to be at a sinusoid. In capillary exchange, we're going to have two major steps that are going to be occurring. From the arteriole, the force of the heart is going to be pushing the blood through, so we have a fairly good blood pressure coming in, and then we're going into these really small capillaries. With that force of the heart, it's going to cause what we refer to as filtration, where basically anything that is small enough to be dissolved within the water in the blood is going to be forced out through our little capillary fenestrations or the barrier between two different endothelial cells. All of those are going to flow out because of the force of the heart, and you're going to push out about 24 liters per day that's being pushed out of the capillary to go to the tissues and the cells that are surrounding it. So that filtration process of pushing anything dissolved within the plasma out into the tissues around it is referred to as filtration. And filtration is driven by what we refer to as capillary hydrostatic pressure. Hydrostatic pressure is essentially the same thing as blood pressure, and it's just the blood pressure that's within the capillary at that time. So it's the force of the heart that's going to be creating pressure to push the blood plasma out of the capillary and into the cells around it. Now notice when we're looking at filtration, it's saying the capillary hydrostatic pressure is greater than the BCOP. BCOP is the blood colloid osmotic pressure. Osmotic pressure is a chemical pressure. Remember, osmosis is going to be the movement of water due to different concentrations, where the water is going to be moving towards the area that has a higher concentration. Osmotic pressure is the pressure that's going to be applied to prevent osmosis from occurring. So blood colloid osmotic pressure is going to drive the reabsorption that we're going to see later on here, because as you're doing filtration, you're pushing out all that fluid, all that water is going out, but what is being left behind? All of those proteins. So the plasma proteins are going to be left behind, which is going to create a greater osmotic pressure difference. Now it's going to want to drive water to be pulled back in because you have higher proteins inside the capillary because you pushed all the water out. So in that case, when you start out, When you're going through filtration, the capillary hydrostatic pressure is greater than the blood colloid, and as you start pushing out the fluid though, your blood colloid pressure is going to start increasing until a point you're at this net movement of 0. So we're at a point where you don't have any net movement that's going to be occurring because they're going to be the same. And then eventually it's going to flip where all of a sudden the blood colloid osmotic pressure is going to be greater than our capillary hydrostatic pressure, and that's going to cause us to pull water back into the capillary from the cells around it. What we're looking at overall is what we refer to this NFP. NFP is our net filtration pressure, where we're looking at the difference between the capillary hydrostatic pressure and the blood colloid osmotic pressure. Here we're at a plus 10 with our CHP that is going to be higher, so the fluid will then be pushed out of the capillary. Notice we are at a small point where we have no movement, so we're going to have that 0 for the net filtration pressure. But then at a certain point, our net filtration pressure is going to be down to the negatives, and then that's going to cause us to reabsorb the fluid back into the capillary because our colloid osmotic pressure is now higher, and so we're going to want to pull water in to kind of lower that out before we're going into the venule. All this movement back and forth, we're pushing things out into the cells, like our oxygen and our nutrients that are going to help to feed our cells, and then we're going to be reabsorbing back into the capillary, which means we're taking junk from the cells, like the carbon dioxide that they're made during cellular respiration that they don't need. We're going to pull that into our capillary and then to our venule. This interplay between filtration and reabsorption is going to allow us to have this bulk flow where we're going to have net movement of water out of the capillaries to the tissues and then back to the bloodstream eventually later on through the lymphatic system. Now, we didn't talk about this lymphatic system right here, so let's look at the numbers that we have. Filtration, notes we had 24 liters per day that's being pushed out of our capillaries to the cells and tissues around it. But then when we're talking about reabsorption, you're only reabsorbing 20.4 liters per day. We're going to have a difference in between, and that's what's going to go to the lymphatic vessels. The amount of fluid that you push out is going to equal the amount that you reabsorb into the capillary, but the remainder is what is going to go into our lymphatic vessels, and then that tissue fluid is going to go into the lymphatic vessels and returns to circulation eventually back into the bloodstream. That bulk flow that we have is going to allow us to make sure that the plasma and interstitial fluid are in constant communication and they're always exchanging things back and forth. Looking at the overall flow that we have, our blood, of course, is going to be made up of the plasma and the things that are dissolved within it, plus all those formed elements for the cells. The formed elements in cells are going to remain within because they are not going to be able to fit through the endothelial cells that are making up our capillary wall. When we have that fluid going out, the fluid that was our plasma and things dissolved within it goes out and becomes interstitial fluid. Once that fluid is bathing the cells, we now call it extracellular fluid or interstitial fluid. That interstitial fluid is then going to be, some of it, reabsorbed into the capillary, but then the rest of it is going to go into our lymphatic vessels. At the point that that fluid goes into the lymphatic vessels, we refer to it as lymph. So lymph, interstitial fluid, and plasma are all essentially the same thing. It's just where they came from and where they're being housed at that point, and then what they're picking up from those different areas. And all those fluids eventually go back into your bloodstream and then becomes interstitial fluid. So you have this cycle where you're continually moving that fluid through different areas of the body, and then every time it goes to a different area, we give it a different name.